Hello everyone and welcome to the Julius Baer Generation Cup knockout phase. The preliminaries are over and now it's time to check out who will proceed to the semifinals. This is the first quarterfinal match that we are covering, Magnus Carlsen versus Levon Aronian, and this is game 3. Levon started the match by winning a game against Magnus, then Magnus retaliated in game 2, and this is now game 3. It's a wild attacking game where there will be a lot of attacking, but you will not be able to tell who is actually attacking. So let's dive straight into it. Magnus has the white pieces and he opens with knight to f3. He goes for the reti opening. Levon goes d5, we have d4, knight to f6, and now a nice c4 transposing, well, depending on what Levon plays, he can play something like e6 to go into the queen's gambit decline, he can go c6 to go for the Slav, but he actually just plays d, captures on c4, and he transposes into the queen's gambit accepted. So queen to a4, check by Magnus, knight to c6 here, as c6 is more popular, but Levon goes for a very concrete idea that is extremely rare. He plays knight c6, now Magnus recaptures the pawn, and now pawn to e5. Levon sacrifices a pawn to get some very active play, as you'll see. And okay, Magnus accepts, knight captures on e5, we have knight captures, d captures, and now knight to g4. So Magnus is up a pawn, it's a double d pawn, but still up a pawn, and Levon has this knight on a very weird square already on g4. And now Magnus plays knight to c3. There is a game from the Sinquefield Cup last year that was played between Richard Rapport and Linier Dominguez, where bishop to f4 was played by Rapport, and that game ended in a draw. But here Magnus plays knight to c3, and it is now already, as of move 8, that we have a completely new game. So c6 makes sense to take away some very important squares from this knight, and now queen to e4, just defending this e5 pawn, because if you, for example, instead of c6, if you just play a knight captures on e5, then this queen to e4 move is very, very annoying, just challenging this knight, and there's no good way to handle this. You play queen e7 to defend it, knight d5 already is coming, and now the queen has to keep an eye on the c7 square and on the knight here, so that's why after knight to c3, it does make sense to play c6. So queen to e4, now Magnus does defend the pawn, and the bishop to c5, nicely attacking the f2 pawn. Magnus defends pawn to e3, and now queen to e7. So still down a pawn, but getting some very, very nice development in. Magnus pushes f4, just to defend e5, and in the future he can use it to further push with f5. Castles by Levon, and now bishop to e2. Preparing to kick away this knight from g4, and also just a castle with bishop to b6, and now Magnus castles. And here Levon says, all right, I don't want to face the marching of those pawns. He pushes pawn to f5, and this will pretty much cement these pawns on the squares as they are. Also, the bishop here is quite beautiful, and he will try to get his pieces into the attack. Bishop to e6, rook might come into the game, and so on. So here we have queen to f3. You could also play e captures on f6 en passant, but it doesn't really make sense to trade everything off here. Okay, you can trade queens, captures, but then comes knight captures on e3, and already that extra pawn that you had isn't really all that relevant. For example, bishop captures with check, king h1, bishop e6, and now it doesn't really matter what you play. If f5, bishop d5, and okay, you will still get your extra pawn. Let's say captures, but black has a very nice compensation with the bishop pair, and it's it's a normal game. So after f5, Magnus retreats with the queen. He plays queen to f3, and now bishop to e6. We have pawn to h3, kicks away the knight, knight to h6, and now bishop to d2. We have g5 by Levon. Also, you could play something like rook 8 to d8, but then just rook 8 to d1, and nothing exciting happens. So Levon sticks to his plan, pawn to g5. He also has some ideas of moving the king to h8, and then just starting to create some sort of an attacking battery here on the g file. King h2, Magnus knows that this is coming, so he moves the king right away. King to h8 by Levon, and now queen to h5. And this is where the game becomes extremely interesting, because now Magnus is threatening to win the knight and also to win the g5 pawn. So how can you stop this? One way to do it is to play knight to f7. This defends the g5 square, but it's not very, very exciting. For example, rook a d1, rook a to d8, some useful moves will be played, and then e4, and Levon does not have all that many active ideas here. It's a pretty passive position for him, and he does not like this. So instead, after queen to h5, rook to g8, he just continues with his plan, and he gives up a full piece here. So he offers queen captures on h6, and other than this, you really it's hard to find a better move. So Magnus does capture it, even though this means that he will come under a brutal attack. So he has to calculate precisely that he can defend this. So queen captures on h6, rook to g6, only square for Magnus's queen is the h5 square, and now rook 8 to g8. Now preparing to open up the g file and play rook captures on g2. And there is only one good move here for Magnus, and of course Magnus finds it, pawn to g4. Idea being that now if you play g captures on f4, simply e captures on f4. You don't have to worry about the bishop, and you don't have to worry about f captures on g4, because if Levon plays this, then f5, and now you will lose even more material. Even if g3 check, you can play king to g2, and your position is perfectly fine. Bishop to d5 is impossible, the knight covers that, so you're good to go. So after g4, Levon says, all right, queen to g7. And this is an extremely, extremely complicated position. There is only one way for Magnus to keep his edge in this game, but he has to find a very particular idea. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the only move that wins the game for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this incredible idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is pawn to e4. And this creates this very, very weird structure here that is very, very rarely seen. I mean, try to calculate all of the pawn captures. I dare you, it is impossible. But one thing that, of course, you can see right away, that if e captures on f5 happens, we'll attack not that, bishop and the rook. And of course, if g captures happens, also will attack the bishop and the rook. So how can Levon deal with this? It's very, very hard. It seems like also rook to h6 is impossible, because you can just play queen captures on g5, you trade queens, and you can no longer continue the attack. Or even if rook to g6, then even you can play this spectacular queen captures on f5. That's the point. Now if bishop captures on f5, just e captures on f5, and look at this. It seems like Levon should be completely winning. I mean, Magnus is down a queen, but there is no move you can make. The rook is trapped. All of the squares are covered. If you play rook to h6, doesn't matter. Knight to e4. And now, once the bishops assume these diagonals, there's no easy way to survive this. And also, the pawns are just spectacular. There's nothing for you to do here. I mean, look at all of those pawns. I mean, that is worth a queen. So, of course, Levon doesn't want to do that. He plays f captures, and it's interesting if Magnus prepared all of this. I'm sure he has, but it would be crazy if he went for all of this, just on intuition alone. So Levon goes for the other idea, which isn't all that impressive. He plays f captures on g4. He allows f5, and now of course rook to h6. This is how he sort of saves the piece, but not really. Queen captures on g4, and now you could play queen captures on e5 with check, but then if queen captures on e5, queen to g3. Not much you can do to continue the attack here. So he prepares it, bishop to c7. Next, he wants to play queen captures on e5, and yes, if Magnus captures the bishop here, then queen captures on e5 is winning for Levon. There's nothing you can do. You move the queen to h2 will be checkmate, and even if you put something on f4 to give a little bit back, just g captures opens up the g file for the rook. You have to move the queen. Now queen captures on e6, attacks the h3 pawn. Next you can play rook captures on h3. If queen captures, then even f4 opens up a discovery here towards the black king. This is just game over. But problem is for Levon that Magnus keeps playing the top engine move every move, and he plays bishop to e1. Now, of course, any queen captures will be met with just bishop to g3. So there's really no point in playing that. So bishop captures on e5 check, bishop to g3, and now bishop captures on g3. We have queen captures, and now g4. Finally, Levon finds a way to open up the to open up the G file, and Magnus says not a problem. He could also keep it closed with H4, but he's not afraid. He says this structure here is impenetrable, so do your best. Bishop to C4 by Levon, and now the bishop has to move. There's really no way to keep increasing the pressure. Rook to G1. We have pawn to B5. Now Levon has to play something. He's down material, but he will of course continue not the attack, but the game. Pawn to E5. Now there's no time to wait. Of course, B4 is coming, but the pawns are incredibly scary. So B4, knight to E4, and now bishop to D5, attacking the knight. But here just rook A to E1, and he was in this position on move 32 that Levon Aronian resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Magnus takes another win. So even though Levon won the first game, Magnus won the second and third one, and the fourth one is still being played as I'm recording this video. So I don't know what will happen there, but Levon has to win on demand to bounce back. Now, of course, you could continue, but Levon had some 10 seconds on the clock. Magnus had like 5 minutes, and there's really no good way to play this. To give you an example, okay, the bishop here isn't all that useful, attacking nothing, and the knight is just, you know, a beautiful piece here, so it makes sense to trade here. Let's say captures, but again, no moves for Levon. If queen to G5, you're gonna push the pawns. F6. If rook H to G6, now okay, you've tripled up here, but F7. If rook to F8, pawn to E6, and there's just no stopping the pawns. Also some queen checks are possible if the queen moves from the control over the E5 square. So how do you stop E7? There's no way to do it. You have to play it, and then queen E5 check just runs into rook G7, and let's say bishop D1 opens up an attack here. Next move, you're gonna get checkmated, or you can just start giving up material for nothing. So yeah, after rook A to E1, beautifully played by Magnus and Levon, but like I said, Levon played a brilliant sacrifice, brilliant attack, but it was really a problem for him that Magnus just found all the top moves and was able to defend the position, because it was really a nice sacrifice, really a creative one, just opening up the G file like this. But the problem is the G file never got opened up, and maybe it was the queen sacrifice that Levon didn't take into consideration there. But you know, who knows? After E4. Anything is possible. Yeah, but this line is just so beautiful. Rook H6, queen captures on G5, and after rook G6, even queen captures on F5. I mean, look at this: bishop captures, E captures. There's no square for this rook. Rook H6, knight to E4 is coming, and I mean, if the game went this way, oh. It would be you know, on everyone's homepage, you know, just publishing it for everyone to enjoy. But this way, Levon played a brilliant sacrifice. Magnus defended brilliantly, and of course, then he just showed that he's up that extra piece that Levon sacrificed, and there's no point in continuing the game. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Always be careful when you sacrifice a piece. If you know, your opponent is very strong at refuting sacrifices, might not go as great, but you know, he had to try something. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely played by Magnus. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Gogo, and I would like to thank Guia Para La Paz Interior, Stuart Matthew, Derek King, and Brian Paquin for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. Really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event until it finishes. And for those of you who figured it out on the pause the video moment, I actually gave you a little hint in the quote above the board. See you soon.